Good morning. No, good morning.
Good morning.
Now, I mean it, man, because see, here's the thing. I got up this morning, and I thought I had like 4 hours to prepare, and then I realized that I had like 90 seconds to prepare. So it was my choice. I chose this slot. However, I did not know it was daylight savings time, so I'm like kind of hot. I'm hot with me. I'm hot with y'all for no reason. For no reason. I'm so hot with y'all. But I'm here, man. I'm here. It's Sunday morning in Austin. As Janet said, my first film, Medicine for Melancholy, premiered at this festival, world premiered at this festival. So I like to say that South by Southwest is kind of like the birth of Barry Jenkins, filmmaker in a certain way. And I remember being here in 2008, which is something I'll talk about. We're being here in 2008 and sitting in a room just like this, listening to people talk from a stage behind a podium just like this, and wondering, what does it take to get from the back of that room to the front of this stage? And that was 10 years ago, 10 years ago, 10 years ago. I want to repeat it because people say, oh, Barry Jenkins is an overnight sensation. I'm like, that was a damn 10-year night, you know? That was a very, very long night. There was not anything overnight sensation about it. But in looking back, looking forward, it's impossible to know what it takes to get from, you know, this seat here in the front row to the podium where I'm standing at. But looking back, there are a few connections that arise, and those things typically come back to love, the abundance or absence of love, both in our personal lives and our work, and family. So I'm going to end up talking about those things at some point. Bear with me. I lost an hour of sleep last night, man. I'm still hot about that, man. Down with daylight savings time. So I want to start by reading something to you guys, something I've never read out loud before. And I was trying to figure out what I could possibly say to add to the wonderful conversation that's been going on at this festival this weekend. You know, just like you guys, whenever I have a chance to be in a room like this, listening to someone speaking from a podium like this, I take it. And so listening to Darren speak yesterday, I was incredibly moved. I wanted to run through a brick wall, which is something I'll talk about a bit later, the concept as filmmakers, as artists, of wanting to run through a brick wall to get to a stage like this. I'm going to give you all a little piece of advice. It's not worth it. However, we continue to run through those brick walls, but I was listening to Darren speak and trying to figure out what I could possibly say to add to the conversation. And I was trying to think externally. What could I add to this external conversation, this talk that I'm going to have to participate in? And instead of looking outward, I'm 38 years old. I still have to teach myself this lesson over and over again. I decided to look inward. So I'm going to read something, man, that I have never read out loud before, that I purposely avoided reading out loud this year in a very public way, on a very public stage, but I'm going to read it to you guys now. And those words are, Terrell and I are Chiron. We are that boy. And when you watch Moonlight, you don't assume a boy who grew up how and where we did would grow up and make a piece of art that wins an Academy Award. You certainly don't think he will grow up to win Best Picture. I've said that a lot, and what I've had to admit is that I placed those limitations on myself. I denied myself that dream. Not you, not anyone else, me. And so, to anyone watching this who sees themselves in us, let this be a symbol, a reflection that leads you to love yourself. Because doing so may be the difference between dreaming at all and somehow, through the Academy's grace, realizing dreams you never allowed yourself to have. That is the speech I would have read after winning Best Picture. However, in my shock and awe and oh my goodness, out-of-bodiness, that thing came out in a very different way. But I wanted to start this talk today by talking about the concept of dreams and the dreams that I myself never allowed myself to have. And part of that is because I never was allowed to, or I never allowed myself to see those dreams in action. So I'm gonna take y'all way back home to Miami, Florida. Yes. When I thought about this, I got up this morning and I brought a couple nice shirts. I was gonna iron them all, but then I thought it's like South by. It's like you go into church, but it's like that church where the policy is come as you are. So it's like the one where you see people wearing Timbs and like jeans, That's the church we at. So thank you for that, yes, my dear. I grew up in Miami, Florida, and I was born into a situation that, as my speech just said, that you don't assume is going to give rise to someone who wins an Academy Award, to someone who goes on to create art that people of all creeds, races, genders, sexualities find a way to see themselves in. I was born to a mother who was addicted to crack cocaine. And there were three of us. I have one brother, one sister. They're both a decade older than myself. And I was born in 1979 in Miami, Florida. Crack cocaine hit. And it was a very, very difficult upbringing. I was a child who never thought that they were special, And certainly it's kind of good because I still don't think I'm special, which is very important because with what's happened to my life in the last year, you need to be reminded that you are not special. And I grew up living my life that way. I was a public school kid. I was very quiet. I didn't participate. And I observed people. I watched people. And I remember watching movies and kind of liking movies. My favorite movie growing up is very close to Moonlight. There's a movie called Die Hard. I watched Die Hard like so many times. And I remember watching Die Hard one Christmas because it's the best Christmas movie ever made. And I remember all the credits started to roll on the film. And I just thought to myself, what are all those names and who are all these people? Like, what's a scenic? What's a grip, What's a script supervisor? And at a certain point, it hit me by the end of the credits that this thing I'd watched, and at that point that I'd watched many times, was created by people. There were all these artists, all these men, and a few women, I'll get back to that, who had built this piece of art. And it was like a deconstruction of the myth of the amazing movie Die Hard from my very young hood living self. And again, it was still too far away from me. I didn't think, okay, I think I want to be one of the names on that list. I think I want to make films. So I go on and I graduate from high school. Again, I am a public school baby. Free lunch, shitty textbooks, like the whole thing. And in the state of Florida, there was this thing called Bright Futures. It was a fund put together by the Florida Lottery where if you had a certain GPA, a certain test score, they would pay your tuition to any state institution. So my life, as you will learn by the end of this speech, is a series of random happenings and fascinating incidents. Because I applied to two schools. I applied to the University of Florida, and I applied to Florida State University. Well, I'm gonna out myself for a second, though. I have to say this. I'm just gonna tell it all today. I am a massive Florida Gator fan. I am. However, my degree is from Florida State University. So I applied to these two colleges, and I got into both UF and FSU. And I thought, I'm going to UF. I love the Gators. I want to be in the swamp. I want to go to the stadium. And then just by happenstance, I took a trip to Tallahassee with my homeboys who had all gotten into Florida State. This is like in April. And so I take this trip to Florida State, and I just have the best time of my life. And I go, I'm going to FSU. It was nice being a Gator fan, but I'm going to FSU. So I'm at Florida State, and I think to myself, well, what am I going to do with my life? I have no idea. And I always knew that I wanted to give back. When Barry Jenkins' career is done, he's going to be standing in a classroom. That's what my life is meant to be. And I went to Florida State to be an English teacher, high school English teacher. And something happened where the education program at Florida State, I'm not going to throw any shade, but it just didn't work out. So I had to switch. So I switched to creative writing, and I was doing creative writing for about 2.5 years. And then literally, again, my life, I can only look back, I can't look forward. I have no idea what's going to happen 10 years from now, and I usually only realize what happened by looking back 10 years in the past. I was walking across campus, and there was a sign that said film school. And I was like, there's a film school at Florida State? And I was like, oh, Die Hard started flashing through my head. And so I was like, oh, they must make Die Hard here. And so I go and I do a little investigation, and yeah, in the football stadium at Florida State, which is a very dark place for me to go because I'm a Gator fan, but in the football stadium, there is the film school at Florida State University. And so I go, all right, cool. I'm gonna be like a screenwriter. And I applied to this film school knowing nothing. I mean, bruh, man, I was so, my life, I've been so naive in so many things, and yet I just keep running through these brick walls and somehow end up on the other side. I'm gonna apply to this film school, and of course I'm gonna get in. And then I learn 800 kids apply to this film school, 15 get accepted every year. And so I apply to the school, and I say, you know what? It's cool, I love movies, I just want to write movies. I have this creative writing degree, you know, I love short stories, I think I could be an asset. Now, here's the thing. We always talk about these diversity programs and things like that, and some people talk about them in very positive ways, some people talk about them in very negative ways. Florida State at that time had only been in existence for 10 years. Florida State at that time was a very, very homogenous film school. I think of the 60 kids who were in the program, the grad and undergrad, maybe 2 were not Caucasian, you know, and you know they were maybe like 70% male, 30% female, and there were only I think 2 black students in the history of the program before I applied. In the class that I entered, Florida State Film School, there were like 7 black kids. It was like a revolution. There's so many of us. And I think about why and how I was accepted into that program. And part of it was I had a focus. I was like, I'm from this place that none of these other kids are from. I want to write and tell my stories. And also, I'm going to work so hard, so much harder than everyone else. And there's no doubt in my mind that it was like, you know what? The school decided we need to make a change. You know, we need to invite a more diverse body of students. Now, 15 years later, 2 of those 7 kids have been nominated for Academy Awards. So I think Florida State made some very wise decisions. So anyway, so I get into this program, and I think all I want to do is write. I just want to be a screenwriter. But the film school at Florida State University, which I will shout out to the end of my days, forces you to do everything. So if you are a woman who's not comfortable with photography and you think, I don't want to do cinematography because that's not for me, at Florida State University, you have to pick up a camera and shoot someone's film. If you are a young black boy from the projects who does not know you need light to expose film, Florida State don't give a damn what you're not comfortable with. The first day of class, you get a 400-foot daylight spool of film and a Bolex camera. You were taught to load it, and you were told to go out and shoot. So I enter this program, and I'm like, I'm badass. I'm gonna make Die Hard. I'm with all these kids, and we're all just gonna go out and make stuff. My shit's gonna be awesome. And of course, it was not. It was so not awesome that at the end of the first semester of film school, I actually went back, I went to the dean and said, and this is, I'm gonna spread a few messages throughout this talk. I think, who in here is under the age of 30? Show of hands. Oh, I love it, I'm speaking to the right people. At certain points in your life over the course of your career, but I wanna say in your life and your career, you have to be real with yourself. One semester into film school, I think I changed my own life by just being real with myself. I was a terrible, terrible film student. Terrible because I didn't have the tools to know how to utilize my voice in the realm of filmmaking. So I went to the dean. I said, Dean, I love being here. I really wanted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me into this program. I need to leave. I went to the dean and said to him, I do not want to continue in film school right now. And I said to him, I don't want to continue right now because I do not have the skills that my classmates have. Will you please give me a year to leave this program, bring myself up to speed, and I will come back and I promise you I will not waste this slot. And he said yes. Dean Frank Patterson said yes. And so I literally took a year off film school. I had started a creative writing degree, and I thought, oh, I'll just go and somehow I'll become this 6-year undergrad student by finishing my creative writing degree while doing what I described independent study. Some of you have probably heard this story before. I took a still photography class. I went to Blockbuster Video and went to the foreign film section, and I watched every single foreign film that was on the shelf. There was a science library on campus called the Dirac Science Library. It changed my life, because in the top floors, you had all these things about chemicals and cells and biology, And in the basement, for Lord knows what reason, you had this treasure trove of art books. You had Masters of Light, you had Thoughts on a Cinematographer, just all these things. And so for a year, I buried myself. And I buried myself because I had a question in my head that I didn't want anyone to ask me before I'd answered it for myself. And that question was, is this guy not good enough for this program because he's black and he's poor, he grew up with a mom addicted to drugs? Or does he just not know you need light to expose film? And so I took that year off and I said, you know what? I'm gonna learn how to expose film better than anybody else in this program, and I'm gonna read and listen to as many DVD commentaries as possible. I'm gonna find the most obscure film journal that's written in English, which was Sight and Sound, because I couldn't translate Kahoot to cinema for myself. And I'm going to read as much film criticism as I possibly can. I'm going to open the field of my experience as wide as possible, and then I'm gonna come back. And when I come back, I'm gonna show them. I'm gonna show every damn body. Now, I should have only wanted to show myself, but I thought I'm gonna show every damn body. So I come back into the program a year later, and now, and again, there's so much fate. If you've seen anything I've done, it's probably been shot by a cinematographer named James Laxton. Had I continued in film school without taking that year off, I would have been a year ahead of James Laxton. Instead, I took a year off, and when I came back, here's this dude from San Francisco who I've never met before, who is as obsessed with Wong Kar-wai as I am. And so here we go. We hitch our wagon together, and we are gonna go, only by happenstance. So we have to make a short film this first semester, or the second semester in school, and this was shortly after 9/11. And this is gonna be my second point, which is make it personal. Now, making it personal does not mean making it biographical, but make it personal. I was in Tallahassee, Florida. Show of hands, who knows where Tallahassee, Florida is? It is a long way from New York City, all right? But I vividly remember, just like I'm sure there's things in you guys' lifetime that you remember, I remember the world pausing and running into the student lounge and seeing airplanes crash into the World Trade Center over and over and over again. And even as a young black man who grew up in the projects with a mom addicted to crack cocaine, I knew I want to speak to this because this is the only thing I can think about right now. And so I thought, how do I do that? How can I make my personal life, how can I make this personal for me and yet speak to an external happening that is affecting, I feel, everyone in the world at this moment? And I wrote a short film called My Josephine. And there was a laundromat in Tallahassee, Florida, which I love. I say that lovingly. There was a laundromat in Tallahassee, Florida that I was driving by one day, and it had a sign that said, American flags cleaned free. And I thought, that's interesting. Why is this line? I pull over, I go inside, and the laundromat was run by an Arab-American couple. It was their way of showing people in the very red city of Tallahassee that they were good, that we were okay, we were American. Because there was this saying that was going around in less savory humor circles that to be Arab was the new black in America. And I thought, okay, if being Arab is the new black, I know what it feels like to be black in America. Let me take these two things and put them together. And so I wrote this short film about a couple washing American flags on the night shift. And I thought, Barry Jenkins, born of the Poke and Bean projects in Liberty City, Miami, Florida, to a mom addicted to crack cocaine, your first short film is going to be about an Arab-American couple washing American flags. It's going to be in French, Arabic, and English, and it's going to be shot in a style that makes no damn sense. And so I write this short film, and another thing I want to say is be a sponge. So I'm sitting at home, and at this point, James Laxton, my cinematographer, and I live together, and our third roommate is this really weird kid in film school. There's always that one kid in film school who just loves Charlie Chaplin, who's obsessed with Napoleon, and this was that kid. And so he would be, I love this guy, Alejandro. He would just walk around the house spouting all these things about Napoleon. He was like a Napoleon buff. And someday he was gonna grow up and actually finish the Napoleon film that Stanley Kubrick did not make. When you're young, you have very big ambitions. And so he's walking around talking about Napoleon, and he keeps spouting all these facts. And I'm thinking, Napoleon, Napoleon, Napoleon. Again, Barry Jenkins, born of the projects, to a mom addicted to crack cocaine, does not know you need light to expose film. I'm gonna make a short film about Napoleon and an Arab American guy washing America. I just put all that shit in. I just put it all in. But at the core, it was about me knowing what it feels like to be a black man in the South. And so a year and a half after basically deciding that I had to answer this question for myself, can I do this, can I not do this? Am I meant to be here, should I not be here? I made this short film. And how many of you have seen it? It's pinned to my Twitter profile. I know you've seen it. My producer, Adela Romansky, is sitting here in the front row. And so I make this short film, and it worked. It worked, y'all, it worked. Winning Best Picture was amazing. Leaving film school, coming back, and making this short film was foundational. It changed my life. It worked. Oh, I'm sorry, why is this mic on my chest? I'm gonna touch my heart a lot doing this speech, man. And it worked. And so I made that short film, and then I go off and I make another short film. And then I moved to LA. I graduated December 14th, 2003. And someone had told me, because, you know, I'm the kind of person, again, if there's a wall, I'm gonna run through it. I was told, move to LA as soon as you graduate. Like, two things happened. I graduated December 13th, went out, raged that night, woke up December 14th that morning with a hangover, unemployed. That's all I thought, I am unemployed. 5 days later, I was on a plane to Los Angeles. I got there and I was told, get to LA in late December because nobody who lives here is from here. If there's a job that needs an interview, you'll get the interview because there's nobody else here to damn interview for it. And the person was right. Within 10 days of arriving in LA, I interviewed with this director, Darnell Martin. And Darnell Martin is the director. She did a movie called I Like It Like That, which was amazing. Premiered at Cannes, which a lot of people seem to forget. She directed the pilot for She did a movie called Cadillac Records recently. And she was directing this really big adaptation of Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Are Watching God, starring Halle Berry, produced by Oprah Winfrey. So now I, Barry Jenkins, born of the projects, et cetera and so forth. You guys are tired of hearing that now. I'm sitting in Harpo Films 5 days, 10 days after graduating, interviewing for this job. And Darnell, I love telling this story, Darnell's an animal. So I walk into the office and bruh, I ain't ever been to Beverly Hills, and now I am in Beverly Hills. I'm on Maple Drive. You can't get more Beverly Hills than that. And when you walk into Harpo, it's like Ms. Winfrey's face is everywhere on all these magazines, and there's all these like flowers, what do you call it, these orchids. I mean, it was just like the feng shui, there was like stuff dripping. I mean, it was heavenly. And I walk in, and you know, I look at pictures of me back then. I did not know how to dress, man. I was a mess. But I walked in, I had this suit that was maybe like a size 42. I'm like a 38, you know? And I had like these baggy ass pants, man, and like some Reeboks. I was just like doing it. So I walk in, and Darnell is having literally, I love Darnell. Darnell is hosting like 10 interviews at once. There's a kid there, a kid there, a kid here. And she's like sitting down, not interested, gets up, goes to the next interview. It's just like speed dating. And somehow I ended up in the conference room. And if you guys have made short films and they are your best work, you're gonna do these things where you go and sit down and it's like someone like me or someone like my manager or my lawyer it's like the 5-minute advising. Take your short films, you know, and just sit them on the desk. Because I'm sitting in this interview with Darnell and I know nothing, man. I was bombing the interview. But she's sitting there listening to me and I can tell she's not interested in what I have to say, but she keeps glancing down at this DVD. And she goes, oh, what's that? I go, oh, these are my short films I made in film school. And you know, try to play it on the slide, you know? And I just pushed him a little bit closer. And she was like, okay. And then the next question is so Darnell. Oh, she's gonna kill me. She goes, how long are they? And I was like, they're 7 minutes, you know, because at the Florida State Film School, they're very smart. You only realize this afterwards. I used to bitch about having to make my movie 7 minutes, but Darnell goes, 7 minutes? Let's watch him. And so, exactly, yes. I did the same thing in my chest. I was like, oh shit. And so there's 2 movies on this DVD. One of them is a movie called Little Brown Boy, which is the thesis film I had made. Very tough little film. And then the other one was the Arab-American couple Laundromat Napoleon movie that's inspired by Nigella Bites, of all things, aesthetically at least. And so I played the Little Brown Boy first because, man, Barry Jenkins always gets in his own way. We watch it, it's only 7 minutes, and she looks at me and I could tell she's interested, she's curious. She goes, is the other one 7 minutes too? I go, it's actually 6 minutes and 55 seconds. And so we put that one in, and I'm sitting in Oprah Winfrey's office with this world-class director who's about to direct a movie starring Halle Berry, who was just fresh off her Oscar win, and she is watching my 7-minute film about what it feels like to be black in the South, transmute it to an Arab-American couple who's trying to figure out what it feels like to be an immigrant in America. And again, it worked. I got that job. I got that job. And so now, literally 10 days out of film school, as a 23-year-old person, I'm working for Oprah Winfrey. Now, my mom's been proud of me a few times in my life. She was hella proud. I mean, everybody everywhere in Miami knew that I was working with Oprah Winfrey. Maybe like twice a year, I get to go and get coffee for Oprah Winfrey, but yes, I'm working with Oprah Winfrey. So I do that job for a year, and then for the next year, I worked in the office at Harpo Films, and I was impatient, you know? Everybody who raised their hand that said they were under the age of 30, you guys should be impatient, you know? You should want it right now. Now, nobody's gonna give it to you, and you shouldn't expect it to be given to you. And with the tools y'all have, I'm so damn jealous. Y'all should just be out there making it, but you are right to want it right damn now. I quit that job, and I cashed in my 401k, which was foolish, but then was brilliant because the crash happened, and you know the money that was in there would have just evaporated. And I did something that I'd always wanted to do. I wanted to see the world. And when I cashed in my 401k, I just heard my lawyer over there laugh because he does all my contracts. And he's like, yeah, you're never doing that again. And so I cashed in this 401k, and I had about like $8,000. And I thought, I'm gonna go to Europe and backpack because that's what all the white kids do when they graduate college. And a homeboy pulled me aside and said, yeah, you don't have that kind of privilege. If you want to make that 8,000 last, you take trains around the country, you know, and you sleep on couches. So I did this trip. I took trains around the country, and my first stop was San Francisco. I continued on past San Francisco. I fell in love with a woman in San Francisco. I moved back to San Francisco for that woman that broke my heart. Nah, but you know what though? We're still friends. It's all cool. It's all cool. And she was right. I was not ready. She was right. There were things going on in both our lives. She was right. But out of this pain, there came this thing. I had only known filmmaking as a film student at Florida State at that point. And Florida State, which is a program that I love, that changed my life, and that hopefully I'll repeat 5 more times during this talk, you're always on a schedule. You know, like I said, if you're a young person like myself, you know, who grew up disadvantaged and you're not comfortable with cameras, you're gonna be forced to get comfortable with the camera. If you don't believe that you have a director's voice, which I did not think I had, you're going to be forced to develop that voice. Everything's on a schedule. And so for me, this was filmmaking. It's like, I'm gonna get out of Florida State, and then I'm gonna make my own Florida State in Hollywood. Y'all should laugh at that, because no, impossible. And so I was in San Francisco at this time, and people would ask, what do you do? And I'd be like, oh, I'm a filmmaker, of course I am. And then the next question would be like, oh, well, what have you done? They'd be like, oh, I made this 6-minute and 55-second short film about a couple in a laundromat. And then something clicked. I looked at the calendar, and that had been 5 years past. And so I thought, okay, something's got to give. So I read the Robert Rodriguez book that everybody tells you to read, and you know, I read the book that Janet's husband wrote, and I just went through. I was like, what do you do if you want to become an independent filmmaker? And so I wrote the script. I'd been obsessed with this filmmaker named Claire Denis, and a filmmaker from your hometown named Richard Linklater, who had made the Before Sunset series. I was like, I'm gonna make a movie about walking and talking in San Francisco. And so I write the script, and I go, okay, this is perfect. I met all these people in Hollywood. When my mom said I worked with Oprah, I'm gonna create a FedEx package and a business plan and send all this stuff to LA. And so I made the thing like they tell you to do in the book, and I sent it off. Crickets. I mean, crickets. Crickets. You know, I've told this story before, and I think it's a bit callous to those people who did not respond to the business plan for my walk and talk feature film in San Francisco that's black and white but not black and white, shot in 15 days with a 5-person crew. So I always like to slip in that when my job ended at Harpo as a person who had no money, Darnell Martin, the director I worked for, literally bought me a car before she moved back to New York. So she didn't finance my very low budget independent film, but she bought me a damn car because she left me in LA without a car. But anyway, so I write this package, man. I send this thing to LA. Nobody replies to it. I mean, nobody. I think people were too embarrassed to tell me, Barry, it's not 1994. This is not how this works. Because it was 2008 at that point. Go get a camera and make the damn film. The next thing I did, which has become a recurring theme in my life, is I called all these people I went to film school with. There was a guy named Justin Barber who made a film last year called Phoenix Forgotten? Called Phoenix. It was about aliens and stuff in the desert. He's a great filmmaker. And at that point, he was doing all these DVD featurettes. He and a guy named Wes Ball, who you may have heard of. So Justin Barber and Wes Ball were doing paint-outs for Big Brother. And that's how they were making their living, while they were trying to figure out how they were going to break into the studio system. And so I called Justin and said, hey, I got this idea for a movie. I think I could do it really cheap. And so he flies to San Francisco. We have a drink at a bar. And he goes, how cheap can you do it for? I was like, I don't know. How much money do you have? And he wrote on a napkin, $12,000. I was like, yes, we could do it for $12,000. And so I then called up James Laxton, who, again, was my homeboy in film school, who lived in San Francisco. I called up Alejandro, and I called up Nat Sanders. And here's the thing about these moments in your life. Nat Sanders he's the first editor to ever win a Spirit Award for editing. He's also an Academy Award nominated editor now for editing Moonlight. At the time, Nat was making a lot of money, cutting shows like Being Bonaducci, like all these really, really quickly made reality TV shows. And he had always wanted to become a feature film editor, and nobody would ever give him the shot. And so when I told him I'm making this $12,000 feature film with my friends, Nat quit his job, working reality TV in LA, and paid his own way to rent an apartment in San Francisco for 3 months, while me and my 5-person crew made this movie called Medicine for Melancholy. So we get to, thank you, yes, a round of applause for that. Oh, hey, by the way, so I watched Gareth's taping of this from last year. So 2 things, he had a glass of water, and I would love a glass of water right now. And every time he wanted to take a sip, like to break the silence, he would take a sip, you guys would applause and laugh. So the water's gonna come, you guys will applause for the water because I am so parched right now. And every time I take a sip, I want y'all to laugh or give applause or something. Thank you very much. That's my manager right there. Yeah, I'll take that one too. Look at how nice it is, bro. See, this is 2008 Medicine for Melancholy, Barry. This is 2018 Keynote, Barry. But I'm gonna keep them both here, and I'm gonna drink from them both. Actually, the cameraman's like, no, that's in my shot. Let me put this here. So I come here with Medicine for Melancholy for a few different reasons. I don't know if Matt Dentler is in the house. Man, this water is energizing me already. Thank you so much, bro. Thank you so much, bro. So when I wrote Medicine, I knew there was only one place that it could play. That was South by Southwest. There was this thing that was happening called Mumblecore. And the place where you went for Mumblecore was South by Southwest. You know, Andrew Bujalski, Joe Swanberg, Aaron Katz, Frank Ross, all these people, all these white guys, as I say it out loud now, were making all these movies about people standing in a room and talking. And I remember turning to James and going, shit, we can do that. And so, again, Justin had this $12,000. I was like, well, we're going to do that. But we're gonna do it in our way. Is kind of what we decided. And technically, I'll speak a little bit. We shot it on an HVX, and we had this thing called a Red Rock Micro that we put in front of the lens. And it was beautiful watching Gareth give his talk last year, because it's the same way, I think at the same time, too, that he made his first feature with Scoop McNairy. I think it was called Monster. And so we make this film, and I think to myself, there's only one place where we can show this film. It's got to be South by Southwest. It's got to be South by Southwest. I say that because, and I want to say it proudly here, no shade to any other festival. I work at the Telluride Film Festival. I have since 2002. And I've been a juror at Sundance. I have never screened a movie at Sundance. I am a South by Southwest filmmaker, you know? And I want to say that here because at the time, the only appropriate place for Medicine for Melancholy to premiere was South by Southwest. And so you got to be a go-getter. I didn't just randomly get on Without a Box and send the movie in. I was like, who is South by Southwest? It's some dude named Matt Dentler. I hounded Matt Dentler. I was like, Matt, bro, I'm making this film. What you doing? Can you want to see it? He's like, yeah, sure, you can send it here, send it there. I was like, no, Matt, you don't understand. I'm making this film and it's coming to your festival. You have to watch it. And so I think he got tired of me like hitting him up. And he's like, okay, when it's done, you know, just let me know. And we shot the film in late October, early November. We missed the deadline. And so now I'm like, hey, Matt, remember me, that dude who was hounding you? Now I really need you to like pay attention because I'm gonna get this thing in, but it's gonna be a bit late. And so we got the film into Matt Dentler. I think it might have been, oh my God, I was so naive. I think we sent it to him on New Year's Eve. He FedExed it to arrive in Austin on New Year's Eve. And Matt Dentler, being loving Matt Dentler, watched the film. So we come here, we arrive, and I've only been to one film festival in my life at this point. It's the Telluride Film Festival. Very different film festival than South by Southwest. Very different crowd than South by Southwest. I'm gonna drink on that. But we get here, and I realize that all three of our screenings are at the Alamo Draft House, the one right on 6th Street. And I'm like, oh, yes. I'm like, yo, that's hella cool. We're like at the Draft House. And we have 3 screenings, it's like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, something like that. First 2 screenings sell out. People get turned away from our film. I'm like, yo, this is dope. We're selling out all our screenings and blah, blah, blah. There's all this buzz. And then a homeboy of mine was like another filmmaker, because I think Aaron came out just to like support, Aaron Katz. He was staying with us. He was like, who's seen your film? And I was like, everybody. It's like selling out. What do you mean? He's like, well, which theater are you at? I was like, oh, the Draft House. He's like, Barry, that's a 130-seat theater. He's like, 200 people have seen your film. I was like, oh. You know, I'm catching up. This is how this works. So you gotta be a go-getter. Back then, I think the catalog for the festival wasn't digitally printed. I think it was only like the actual physical booklet. So we got a couple Lone Stars and some whiskey, and we went back to our hotel room, and myself, Justin Barber, and Sherry Salter, the other producer on the project, we sat down, and in the back of that registry, now this is a message for you young filmmakers, if you're here with the film or if you're here next year, everybody who's in attendance at this festival has an email in that booklet. We sat down and we emailed every single person who we thought should see the film, going, hey, we have one more screening, we will hold a seat for you, we would love for you to come and see our film. Email everyone, people from, I mean, this is ridiculous, people from Cannes, you know, people from Locarno, people from Toronto, and somehow this lovely, lovely woman named James Shodel replied to our email the next morning. This programmer from the Toronto International Film Festival. I've made a 15-day, $12,000, 5-person, 2 people walking in quasi-black and white film. And this programmer from Toronto was like, hey, your movie sounds really cool. Unfortunately, I've already gone back to my hotel. I don't live downtown. I don't know that I can make it. We go, we will come and pick you up. And she said, you know what? No, I'll get in a cab. I'll come and see the film. Medicine for Melancholy screened at the Toronto Film Festival. This is impossible, impossible, impossible. Now, I'm telling all the good parts now because it's gonna get real sad after this Medicine for Melancholy section. So the next year, I come back to the festival, and I don't handle success well. I don't. Anybody who's seen my Twitter recently probably has gotten wind of that. That's a certain thing just happened a couple of weeks ago, made me feel a certain kind of way. I was in my feelings. I just don't handle success well. And so I came back the next year to the festival. In my mind, I was like, I should have another film. I should have had 3 other films right now. There should be a Medicine for Melancholy Part 2, you know? Linklater did Before Sunset, Before Sunrise. Where's my Before Sunrise? And so I'm here, and I'm kind of mopey, and a friend of mine was here with a film, and that film, beautiful film, it actually went on to screen at Cannes. It was a friend that I'd gone to film school with, and I don't know if it was in my sadness or in their sadness, but we got into a fight. we got into a fight at the closing night party for the festival. The fight was silly. It was silly. It was really silly. But man, it hurt. And we just got into this drag. Like, you watch the romantic comedy and you see like the husband and the wife, they're like at some dinner party and they just start shouting and the director makes everybody else recede to the background and the camera's swirling around. It was like one of those things, but fueled by beer. And so we're just like shouting, and I think to myself, I am never going to speak to this person ever again. And for 4 years, I never spoke to that person ever again. Coming out of the festival, I signed with CAA because the way things happened then, I think it's still pretty slow. We premiered here in 2008. In 2009, we released into theaters. IFC bought the film, did a very smart thing. Timing is everything. They released the film on Super Bowl Sunday. Who the fuck releases a movie on Super Bowl Sunday, I thought. But it was really smart because there was nothing else releasing on Super Bowl Sunday because we didn't know things about football that we know now, so more people watched. And A.O. Scott of the New York Times reviewed Medicine for Melancholy and made it a critic's pick. And within a month, I was signed at an agency because everybody loves to co-sign. I signed at this agency. I get a deal. Thank you for that. I get a deal at Focus Features, and now I'm going to make myself into the filmmaker that I think a person in my position should become. I started working with James Seamus and John Lyons at Focus Features. Great guys both. They really showed me the ropes of the studio system, how to navigate my career. And yet, I wasn't navigating myself. I was working on this project about Stevie Wonder and time travel that for a person who made a $15,000, 5-person crew, 15-day film was impossible. I mean, I thank those fellas every time I see them for humoring me that I could have figured out how to make a Stevie Wonder time travel. I call it Eternal Sunshine of the Stevie mind. But it didn't work. And so a year passed, and then another year passed, then another year passed. I remember coming to this festival in 2012, 2013, and another embarrassing, I have a lot of publicly embarrassing things happen to me in Austin, apparently. I'm walking down the street, and people keep asking me, hey, Barry, when are you gonna make another film? And I'm like, yeah, man, at some point. And over the course of the days, the question gets asked again and again and again. So finally, this producer, oh, bless his heart, very nice guy, is about to say something to me, anything, and I go, I know, I gotta make another film. And I put my head down and I walk off. And I thought, this is ridiculous. And so I kind of went into hiding. I was like, I'm not going to South by ever again. And this is actually my first time being back at South by since that incident. Very different circumstances now, though. And so I get like 5 years from Medicine for Melancholy, and my deal at Focus Features has lapsed. You know, nobody's picking up the phone, except my agent, who I'm still with to this day. And I get a phone call from a friend. I get a phone call from the same friend I had this knockdown, drag-out fight at the closing night party of South by Southwest 2009. I get a call from Adela Romansky, who you've probably seen me on the stage at the Oscars with. Me and this woman got into one of the worst fights, worst public fights I've ever gotten into in my life. Like, I was crying. I think you were crying too. It was bad. And 4 years, 5 years later, she calls me and she says, okay, this has to stop. I love you. I think you love me. And neither one of us is doing anything we love in our work right now. We've got to figure this out. And she said to me, you have to make another film, and I want to produce a film with somebody who I love about something they care deeply about. So let's figure this out. And so every day for a series of what feels like 5 years, but was probably more like 8 months, one day a month, because I was in Oakland, Adela was in LA, she would call me on GChat. And we would just sit there, and it was kind of like this version of shaming, I like to say. And we would just watch each other through the monitor, and she would say, you're going to riff ideas, and I'm going to give you feedback. And at some point, we're going to figure out a movie that we will make together. We're going to repair this relationship, repair this friendship, and we're going to fix our fucking careers. 3 years later, we were on set making this movie called Moonlight, which is, again, I don't know how this shit happens. It just happens. We make the movie. We go to Miami, to the place of my birth. There are people who are telling me, this is career suicide. You're going to make, again, every time I describe one of my films, it sounds like, who would want to watch that? I'm going to go to Miami and make this triptych about a young black boy struggling with his sexuality and his mom's addicted to crack cocaine. We're going to cast 3 different actors to play him. The 3rd actor is going to look nothing like the first 2 actors. Nobody's going to know who any of these actors are. And Adela's only question was, but do you love it? And I was like, yes, all right, let's do it. So we go and we make the film, and you know, what happens with the film happens with the film. I don't even like to say you guys saw the Oscars, but you saw the Oscars. We end up backstage, and I'm hugging this person who I've had one of the worst public fights I've ever had in my life with, and we're both crying. And I was thinking about the speech that I wanted to give, which I'm going to read part of very quickly before I wrap up and open this to questions. When you watch Moonlight, you don't assume a boy who grew up how and where we did would grow up and make a piece of art that wins an Academy Award. I've said that a lot, and what I've had to admit is that I placed those limitations on myself. I denied myself that dream. I denied it because I never saw it. And in the moment of being backstage and trying to figure out what the hell had happened, and hugging this person who I loved dearly, who I once hated, but who I loved dearly, and I thought back to being on set, because I remember this day where we were shooting in the Poke and Bean projects. Anybody know what the Poke and Bean projects are? Yeah. Thank you, my dear. So we're working in the Poke and Bean projects, and there were a few things that happened. One, I don't talk the way I did when I grew up in Miami. So when I first went back to make this film, people were like, nah, bruh, you're not coming in here to make this film. And they're like, are you sure you're from here? I was like, yes, I'm from here. We used to live right there. That's my aunt, blah, blah, blah. I had to literally like go back and get like high school transcripts to prove that I was from this place, that I lived in this place. But eventually, through casting people from the community, through spending just like planting roots again in the community, they grew to accept us, and they became a part of the process, a part of the film. There's this thing that happens in neighborhoods that are, one, systemically oppressed by the government institutions that do not send out someone to replace the street lights when they burn out, that do not send someone out to replace the stop sign, you know, when it falls over. Basically, there are not a lot of lights, literally, in these neighborhoods. And when you're making a film, you have to put up all these lights. Because there's no lights, the kids do not come out and play at night. And so we're here making this film, and we notice all the parents who normally keep their kids in the houses, they're allowing their kids to come out and play. Now, we're trying to make a movie, but all these kids are running around, dressed period inappropriately. They're running around trying to play as we're making this film. And I remember being on set one day, and the kids, I mean, and here's the thing, kids that grew up where I grew up, they don't give a fuck about protocol. And so it's like, hey, action, cut, all right, quiet on the set, all right, lock it up, lock it up. It's like, I ain't locking shit up. And so we just got used to being around, and it's like, you know, you just kind of like adjust to production, you know, okay, we're not gonna roll right now, we're just not, you know, we'll roll when the kids are done. And, but Adela Romansky, my friend, my best friend, is really about allowing the community into the process. And so at one point, we're making the scene. I remember the scene it was exactly, too. It's when Kevin drops Chiron off after they've had this moment on the beach. He drops him off, they dap in the window, Chiron walks off with his backpack, he's got this beautiful smile on his face. We're filming that scene, and with this movie in particular, I had to be very active. I couldn't be at Video Village, and so I look back at one point, and I see all these kids who normally are running through my shot, they're sitting at Video Village. They're literally sitting in our chairs. They're wearing our contacts. I've said that a lot, and what I've had to admit is that I placed those limitations on myself. I denied myself that dream. I never saw it. And when I look back at these kids sitting in my chair, wearing my contacts, watching us make this film that's gonna go on to win Best Picture, they see in me the dream I never allowed myself to have. It floored me. It floored me. And if I cried that night, it wasn't because we won Best Picture. I cried because I realized I denied myself that dream for so long. And I didn't even recognize it when, through the help of my friends, I was able to give that dream to someone else. So that's what I got to say, man. If y'all got questions, I will gladly answer them. I'm gonna take a drink. Thank you. Thank you. Please ask soft questions. I'm a little emotional right now. Make the first one soft, all right?
All right, I'll try. Thank you so much for this. I had just seen My Josephine on Vimeo recently, and I'm glad you discussed it because I had such a strong connection to the film. When I immigrated from Nigeria during that time, 9/11, and I was just learning what it meant to be Black in America, and I had a neighbor who was also Muslim American, so I was noticing our parallel relationship to America. So I was wondering, with our political climate, would you be inspired to make a film similar to that again? And if you do, how do you get a chance to be a part of it?
Shoot your shot. I would be open to make a film like that aesthetically would be wild for me right now. I would love to. It's funny, I think, especially for the people in here who said they were under the age of 30, remember the courage and the passion you have right now. As you get further in your career and there are more responsibilities, you'll find yourself shrinking away from that boldness without even realizing it. I think the film that we just made, If Beale Street Could Talk, is on the same wavelength as My Josephine in a few different ways. Part of that is because it's adapted from the work of James Baldwin, and I think Baldwin, especially at that time that I made My Josephine, spoke to me in such a profound way. So I think when you see the next piece, which is already in the can, unfortunately, but I'm glad you shot your shot. I think hopefully, there you go. I think hopefully you'll see that it's on the same continuum as My Josephine.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm Calvin. Just want to say thank you for your talk. Thank you for telling us your story. I really appreciate hearing it. It was just really moving to hear. I am a Black filmmaker, and I've loved films, but there's been so many times where I've been the only Black filmmaker in the room. Like, I love the people I work with, like, they're great people, but that feeling is always kind of there in the back of my mind, and I'm always thinking about it. I know you've been in that situation, and you've been in that experience time and time again, and I know we're all moving forward, and I want to thank you for, I'm sorry, that moment at Video Village is still getting to me. But what's your advice for those people in those rooms by themselves until more people come, until more things start changing? Mm-hmm. For people who are the only ones in the room, female filmmakers too, what should they do until their time is eventually coming? But in the meantime, to keep striving forward, what's your best advice? I know this is a really easy question, so I'll just give you plenty of time to answer it.
The easiest. I'm glad you weren't first, bro. I think you have to find common ground. Look, I am a perfect example. I think the work I make outward-facing is one thing. I think the people I make that work with is another thing. James Laxton is one of my best friends and closest collaborators. He is a very white dude, And I remember being in classes with him, and I was not the only Black person, but one of very few. And we found common ground. We found common ground in the work. We found common ground and the things that both moved us and inspired us. And I think I'm going to sound like very, very hippy-dippy. I think there's more that connects us than there is that separates us, for sure. I think sometimes you have to look a bit deeper, and you shouldn't have to. Sometimes you do have to look a bit deeper to find that connection. But here's the thing, man. Shane Carruth is a friend of mine, and when Shane Carruth wants to make a movie, he goes out and he makes it pretty much all by himself. I don't recommend that. You don't have to, but if you had to, you could. I think that right now is a wonderful time to be a creator of any stripe, and I think that I'm going to sound ageist now, but the tools that you have are just so much far more accessible and advanced than the tools I had when I was your age. That I think eventually, as you make the work will bring the community that you seek to you. The work itself will coalesce around each other. The beauty of me for film, the beauty of me that I found in being in film school was I didn't know a single white person in my life until I got to Florida State. And I didn't have any genuine white friends until I got into the film school at Florida State. And it moved me so much that I'm still working with those friends to this day to know that when I decide I want to make a movie about an Arab American couple washing American flags, that no matter if you're white, straight, black, or whatever, if you were a kid in that program, you're going to stay up 36 hours to help Barry make his film. And I think that kind of connectivity rooted in collaboration, look for that. And maybe the people you connect with first won't be people who look like yourself, but as you make the work that you care about, that work is going to create the community I think you seek. Trust me, bruh.
Awesome. That's a great answer. Thank you.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
My name is Narissa Street, proudly representing the 305.
There we go.
Yo. So a few things. First of all, thank you for being here. This was a gift. I came to speak at EDU and decided to hang out for film because I work with teens in film in 305.
Mm-hmm.
And my question to you, because this is a dilemma that I have working with them and talking to them about, developing their work. We produce work there. We've got burgeoning indie film there. We've got amazing talent. And as you said, there is a skill gap that we're ambitiously trying to fill. But do you think that we need to be preparing our kids to get moving to LA, to New York, or can we stay? You made the film in Miami. We're working in Miami. Can we stay, or do we have to go?
Terrell McCraney is making a series set in Miami right now. Terrell, who wrote the play on which the film Moonlight is based. It's a complicated question. I think one of the things that sets people who move to LA from parts unknown apart is the fact. I don't know what that means for this answer, but I'm gonna keep going. The sound man is like going crazy over there. It's cool, bro. It's cool. This one or this one? All right, cool. Let me step back. I think one of the things that sets people apart who move to LA from parts unknown is the fact that they are not from LA. LA is a vat of homogeny. It amazes me that such beautiful stories still come out of LA because we're all living in the same space and we're all telling each other the same stories. So there's something about moving to LA from the Ozarks, from the Polk and Beans, from Apalachicola or wherever, and bringing that story to Hollywood. It sets you apart for sure. I don't think it's necessary with the tools that we have right now. We're at South by Southwest, where interactive and film kind of merge. There's actually a documentary about Liberty City Optimist that's playing here at South by Southwest. I don't think it's necessary to move. I think the problem, and this is something, I had so many notes that were so much darker that I'm not going to say. This is a time to be happy and feel blessed, because we are all happy and blessed and well fed. But I think that there's so many ways to make content and so much content to be made that making, and I did want to say this to the room, being talented is not enough. Making a wonderful film is not enough. You know, I said this throughout the whole award season, the whole life of Moonlight, and I'll say it again. You know, I have friends who've made films that I think are just as worthy, just as meritorious as Moonlight, that did not receive the reception that Moonlight received. Moonlight did not do what it did because I'm special. It's just one of those things that happen. I say all that to say that you kind of have to just keep making the work. And just like I told Homeboy, who's trying to find his community, in some ways you just have to have faith that as the work gets better, as the skills get better, somehow, not that the industry will come, but you will find your place. You know, you will find a place to apply those skills, and I think most importantly, a way to be fulfilled both financially and spiritually in the work. So,
Thank you.
yeah, I mean, Terrell is a MacArthur genius and a very well-paid man, and he does not leave Miami. You know. Yes.
Hey, Barry.
Hey,
Thank
what's
you
up,
so
bro?
much. I know you said earlier that you don't like to think you're special, but I think everyone here knows that you've earned and deserved everything you got, and thank you so much.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
My question is just, you said you don't like to predict what's going to happen in the next 10 years, of course, but what are your hopes for the next 10 years, for the industry that's changing, and for yourself?
I mean, for everybody in here who raised their hand that was under 30, who I assume wants to make films, I hope they get to make their films, you know? That's as much as anybody can ever ask, you know? I want people to be able to explore their passions and fulfill their dreams, you know? Now, it depends on what dreams you have, you know? If you have a dream of winning Best Picture, I can't tell you to pursue that dream. That's not something to be pursued, you know? If you have a story you very, very viscerally want to tell, I want you to have whatever resources you need to realize that dream, you know? And I think over the course of the next 10 years, I also hope, too, that we create enough spaces for everyone, especially for people who have not been allowed the space, who've been denied the space to tell those dreams, to do so. Perfect example. I'm going to implicate myself here. I was scheduled to give this keynote from 11 to noon. There's a filmmaker named Nigel Moonim who has a film called Jen that somehow is also screening at 11:30 this morning. There's also, the Wrap has, no, it's screening right now, but it's also screening tomorrow. And then the Wrap also has Women in Power breakfast is happening right now. And so inadvertently, I, a person who both a man and someone who won Best Picture, I'm taking up space from a young female director who's having her world premiere right now, and this group of women that are discussing things that are very important to the industry. So I hope that over the course of the next 10 years, there's enough space for all those things to happen, and that the space I take up doesn't deny anyone access to the same space. That's my dream.
Thank you.